it is time in our redraft leagues that we need to go after these league-winning assets. We need to go make trades that we will talk about at the end of the season, and then that trade is what made me win my league. So we're going to give you 4 players today that we're going to target that we think could help you win your league, could get you over that line, can push you to win that championship. So our first player today is going to be Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard has had a very surprisingly good season, right? He's played for the Titans, obviously. We thought he was going to be in like a 50-50 split with Tajay Spears coming into the year. That just has not been the case. He's been more of like 70-75% back, which we really like to see that. That's pretty rare nowadays. And he's taken, he's been very good with the opportunities, averaging 15 points per game, which is pretty solid. Tajay Spears just got a hamstring injury this past week. He's labeled as week to week. So I think that Tony Pollard could even expand his role further in the next coming weeks and then maybe even like retain some of that receiving role after that. Um, on top of that, what's the real selling point for me on Tony Pollard is his playoff schedule is absolutely insane. You have Cincinnati, then Indianapolis, and then Jacksonville in the fantasy playoffs. That is the dream schedule. And what that schedule can do is make Tony Pollard go from a high-end running back 2 to a high-end running back 1 for those 3 weeks. And realistically, as long as we're in the playoffs, that is all we care about, right? I could very easily see Tony Pollard averaging 20 to 23 points per game in the fantasy playoffs because of how bad those defenses truly are. And I don't think you have to pay that much for Tony Pollard. I mean, his name isn't that sexy, right? I'd be willing to send maybe a low end running back 2. Maybe Chase Brown's got some hype right now. Maybe Najee Harris has had a good game. And then package that with a flex wide receiver, someone that, maybe can start from somebody, but it's not starting for you. And then just go get Tony Pollard, right? He's going to be good for you. He's going to help you get to the playoffs because Tajay Spears is out. And when you're in the playoffs, he's going to be an absolute rock star for you, someone that has the opportunity to win your league by himself.
Yeah, I really like Tony Pollard. When we put out our video before week 2 or week 3, we were all over Tony Pollard. So yeah, good choice. My trade target I'm going to share is James Conner, another running back that doesn't have the craziest name value attached to him. He's RB14 on the season, averaging 13.5 points per game. So nothing too special. And he's coming off a pretty down week. The whole Arizona offense struggled against Green Bay, and Connor in particular, he had a pretty bad game. His lowest usage of the season, he got banged up in the second quarter, and then he fumbled in the third quarter. And just with them being down so much, they didn't really use him much. I think that's the perfect opportunity, though, to buy low and bet on what he has done for the first 5 weeks of the season. Maybe a manager that owns James Conner is kind of scared off by the usage and the fact that they have Trey Benson, who theoretically is an exciting rookie just because of his draft capital. But I think James Conner is the RB1 clearing away in that offense. He's held off Trey Benson again the first 5 weeks of the season, and then just last week was a perfect storm of bad for James Conner. It just didn't work out, and those weeks are going to happen. But again, I'm willing to bet on James Conner, what he's done the first 5 weeks of the season, which is average 15 points per game and be a fringe RB1. So you're going to use that on your team every day of the week, especially when you're trying to win games. That plays a role for your fantasy teams. What I'm looking to trade away for him is maybe an Amari Cooper, someone that's got a lot of excitement just because he went to Buffalo. We personally aren't really excited for that situation just because of the lack of targets and who he is as a player. And then maybe add like a Rico Daddle, just a mid running back and a mid wide receiver. I think that could get you for James Conner if people are really out on him after this week. Again, he's just a go in, get 15 points per game, and you use that, especially when you're trying to win fantasy championships. 15-point per game players, they help you out in those flex spots.
The James Conner a lot. I think he's, once again, like, we're not picking those are 2 very not sexy names, but players that are going to get you more points than you'd expect just by their name value, right? My next player is going to be Cooper Kupp, right? So the big thing here, there's 2 big things of Cooper Kupp. Number one, the team that drafted him likely isn't doing too well. He was probably their 3rd or 4th round pick, maybe 2nd round pick, depending on what league you're in. But you're losing that player for most of the weeks so far, and therefore they're probably not doing too hot. But I believe Cooper Kupp is a wide receiver 1, fantasy wide receiver 1 when he's on the football field. He should be back pretty soon. He might be back next week, week after. I don't know. I think one of the big things you can do with Cooper Kupp, and Dak, you love this because you love fear mongering, is just to fear monger your league mate and be like, listen, man, he might not play this week. You need to win this week. Tell him that he has high injury risk going forward, which he does. I mean, he's coming off a high ankle sprain. That's something that has sidelined him for an entire year before, right? So I'd be like, listen, this has happened before. It could happen again. And it might well damn happen again. But if it doesn't happen, we're banking on the upside that Cooper Kupp is a wide receiver one for the rest of the season, right? Which is most certainly in his range of outcomes, right? As long as he's playing football, I think he's a wide receiver one. And I just think you can get him for a decent bit cheaper than that. So what I'm going to trade away for Cooper Kupp right now, I'm looking at like a low end wide receiver two, someone who's had some hype right now. Once again, if you can trade away Amari Cooper, I know we're mentioning him multiple times now, like do it. But otherwise, maybe someone like a Deontay Johnson, who's had a couple good weeks, but Carolina's been a little slower now. It's like I don't know if that's really going to continue super much. And then throw in maybe like a Nick Chubb coming off his knee getting torn to smithereens. That Browns offense is the worst offense in NFL history over the last like 20 years or something like that. Like he's just so not exciting for me. He doesn't have receiving upside. I think Nick Chubb might average 8 points per game, but he has name value. He's so much name value because he's been a running back one for so many years now. So if you can trade away, like I said, mid to low end wide receiver two, and then throw in, any running back, anyone that can give you any sort of value. Maybe like a Braylon Allen type that has value, but like isn't going to help you win a championship as long as Brees Hall's healthy. And then go get Cooper Kupp, who might average 25 points per game rest of the season.
Yeah, we play fantasy football to win championships. And all those
Yep.
players that you mentioned that you're trading for Cooper Kupp, they're not going to help you, but Cooper Kupp will.
Mm-mm.
So, yeah, I'm all for using the tool of fear mongering to get him on your team and win you a championship. So the last guy we're going to bring up is another guy coming off an injury. It's going to be TJ Hockenson. He's coming off that torn ACL last year. My talking point is less on selling you TJ Hockenson and more on selling you about how bad the tight end landscape is. Chances are, right, if you don't have Brock Bowers, George Kittle, Trey McBride, like, is there anyone else I'm forgetting? How many good tight ends are
Travis
out there?
Kelce.
Travis Kelce. Like, it's four guys you feel good about. Chances are, you're in a 12-team league. 8 teams do not have a tight end that they feel good about. They drafted Mark Andrews. He's been terrible. They drafted Sam Laporta. He's been terrible. So you might have drafted one of those guys, and you're in a situation where it's, maybe kind of stick with those guys, or maybe you try and stream tight end. It's a rough situation out there. I don't think it's a bad option to take a dart throw at a guy who has consistently put up double-digit targets in games as recently as last season. I think when he's healthy, he's probably a 6 to 7 option at the tight end position in NFL. And again, the landscape of the tight end position is really bad. So why not take a shot? Maybe give up like an Austin Eckler or Devontae Williams. I don't want to give up too much for TJ Hockenson because, again, he's coming off a torn ACL. He could come out and just put up stinkers like the rest of the tight ends. It is a crowded offense in Minnesota, but he could also come out and Minnesota give him most of what his role was last year back as he works his way back from the ACL. And that's better than what you're getting from most of the tight ends, aside from like the 4 guys that we brought up to begin with. So again, I'm going to send like an Austin Eckler, a Javonte Williams, not anything too exciting, because again, I don't want to throw too much into a guy that's 9 months removed from torn ACL. But chances are in these home leagues, people just aren't really tuned into fantasy football and how the NFL works. They don't realize that TJ Hockenson, his practice window is open. He could play as early as this week. I probably think he comes back next week against the Rams or the week after that, week 8, week 9. But people aren't tuned in on your home league, so they just don't spend as much time researching as you do. So I would take the shot on TJ Hockenson and see what happens. Because if you shore up that tight end position and you have a good roster everywhere else, you're really set up to make a good run in the playoffs.
And like we said with every other trade target in this video, right? We're targeting upside. And I think TJ Hockenson is someone, let's pretend your tight end right now is averaging 8 points per game, which might be generous, genuinely. Let's pretend he's averaging 8 points per game. Would you be surprised if Hockenson averaged 13.5 points per game? Like that's not that much. And he definitely could average that. And then also you're adding 5.5 points per game to your lineup per week for Austin Eckler, Javonte Williams, someone that we're hopefully not starting ever, right? Like it's worth the risk, right? It's worth the bet. I'm for it. With that being said, we hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.